planet Earth. And right now, especially if I button my bottom button here, we can see that the water right now is clear. It's nice and clean. But this game designed by the EPA is going to show us how we contribute to air pollution just by going about our daily lives. One way that we can do this is let's all take a moment and think about all the things we've done over the past week. So just in the past week, if I name any of these activities and you've either participated in one of these activities, you can imagine that you would also be adding food coloring to your watershed if you were to try this activity at home. The first thing they note is that in the past week, if you've taken a hot shower or a hot bath, that contributes to those to that blue food coloring. So here we go. We've got blue food coloring being added to our air shed. Now, if you've used hot water in order to wash your dishes, or you can also add more blue food coloring. So we'll do about 3 blue drops for every item on this list. Next, if you've driven anywhere in a vehicle, that is red food coloring. We'll go ahead and next we'll add some red food coloring. Now, realistically, right, we should add drops for any time we've driven in our car. People are doing a lot less driving right now since all of us are staying home, but sometimes we still have to take essential trips to the grocery store. So that's 3 drops. If you've gone and picked up food from either a drive-through or a carry-out restaurant, right, that's another trip in our car. If you've gone and checked on a friend or family member by taking your car, that's more red drops. Now, we can also contribute by if some people are still going to work and they operate machinery or even use paints or use a printer at work. That is our industrial air pollution. So even by using a printer, we are emitting gases into the air that contribute to pollution. So we'll add yellow drops for printing, painting, or any sort of industrial work that some people still have to do because some jobs still are essential and we still need people doing these things in order to provide services and goods to everyone at home and in hospitals. Now, if you have gotten fast food or food from a carry-out restaurant, if any of that food was fried or broiled, that's more of that blue pollution added to our glass. So 3 more drops there. Now, the weather, at least where I live, has been fluctuating like crazy. So if in the past week you've used either your air conditioning when it was nice and warm outside, or if you've used your heat since it's snowing today where I live, that's more of that industrial yellow air pollution. Now, we also use warm water when we do laundry, right? So that would be more of that consumer products, that blue. Some of the soaps we use can get into our air as well. Anything that has scents to it can contribute to air pollution. And then lastly, let's talk about some red air pollution here one more time. Now, a lot of us have shifted over to having things delivered to our house. So even though we may not be going out and driving in our cars to go get things from the store, right, we're still having things delivered to our house. It could be food or Amazon deliveries or anything like that. You have to imagine someone is still driving a car or a truck to bring you those goods. And so that would be red air pollution from those vehicles or trucks. We haven't done any green, which was our lawn care stuff. So we can add green if anyone has either mowed their lawn themselves or had any work done in their yard. Now, our water is noticeably not very clear anymore. So our water is noticeably kind of a dark, kind of interesting bluish brown color. Now, we really can't see our contribution to air pollution using these colors in real life. We really don't see it this way, but maybe if we did, we'd be a little bit more conscious of what we're doing to pollute the air. So were all these activities necessary? People are asking questions about what about fertilizers and pesticides? That would be more of that green pollution. So if you have put fertilizer in your lawn in order to help grow plants, some of those fertilizers or pesticides that we use have harsh chemicals in them that can be released into the air. Those all contribute to air pollution. Now, normally, like we said, we can't see it like this, but we can in this demonstration. So I highly encourage you to play the game from the EPA's website. There's a link to that on our website on our at-home science page. I encourage you to try this. You can also find resources for calculating your carbon footprint online as well. And we'll post a link to that calculator with this with this video once we finish up here today. All right, so we've talked a little bit about air pollution, but let's talk more specifically about what gases are actually causing this pollution. So let's take a look at a graph. Go to this one first. On this graph, we have all the greenhouse gases listed. Now, not all of these would have been part of our game that we just played, but all of these gases contribute to the greenhouse effect, to the warming of our Earth through global warming. One of the major contributors to global warming is carbon dioxide. You can actually see that it has the greatest contribution to the global heating imbalance based on this scale right here. Carbon dioxide is really, really great at trapping heat. It's great for absorbing heat and holding onto it, even better at doing that than water is. So for that demonstration, we're going to use something that we've used on Echo Live before, something that is familiar to us, which is a universal pH indicator. Scoot over some of my supplies here because we'll need those just a little bit later. But on the table, I have 2 beakers full of universal indicator. If you remember universal indicator or indicators in general from one of our previous episodes of Echo Live, you might remember that these indicators will actually tell us whether something is an acid or a base. Let me turn off my virtual background, which might help us to see the color of these beakers just a little bit better. Now tell me in the chat, what color is the water inside our beakers right now? So take a close look and tell me, what color do we see at the current moment here inside our beakers? So tell me what color you see, and then I'm going to throw up a picture of our universal indicator scale for all of us to look at. Seeing some answers starting to come in already through Zoom. People are telling me, and on Facebook, they're telling me that it's a dark green. And if we think about our universal indicator scale, that's a good sign. We want our water to be neutral, right here in the middle of our pH scale. If our pH gets too high, we call those things alkalines. That was things like soaps and cleaners. Even bleach or drain cleaner is an example of a strong alkaline or a strong base. If we shift in the opposite direction towards the lower side of the pH scale, those things are acids. We've talked about acids, things like lemon juice or things like battery acid. Those are strong acids, and those will appear red on our universal indicator scale. So keep this scale in mind. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to exhale bubbles into our bottle of, or into our beaker here full of that universal indicator, and we'll watch carefully for a color change based on its pH. Now, this should take about 30 seconds, so bear with me here, but as soon as you see a color change starting to happen, tell me what color you see in the chat. All right, here we go. All right, that should be pretty good, or at least good enough for us to make an observation about the pH or the color of this solution. I'm seeing lots of answers starting to pour in that our indicator has shifted towards a kind of yellower, almost yellowy green color. Let's think back to our universal indicator scale. I can actually put it up on the screen behind me this time. And based on our universal indicator scale, did blowing bubbles into this solution, did it cause our solution to become an acid or a base? Tell me what you think. Did blowing bubbles into the solution cause it to become an acid or a base? I see lots of answers coming in through Zoom. Good observation and interpretation skills, scientists. This has become acidic. We've certainly shifted our pH lower. And so we've actually acidified this solution just by using the carbon dioxide in my own breath. With every breath any living creature takes, we exhale carbon dioxide. And this is just from a human being, right? We need to breathe. We can't stop breathing. But this is just my contribution as a human. In just about 30 short seconds, we have acidified this water. The same thing happens to our oceans and to the water molecules in our air as factories spill out carbon dioxide into the air and into our water sources. Carbon dioxide makes it acidic. Having an acidic ocean is not a good thing. Having carbon dioxide in the ocean also causes the ocean water to warm. And that's not a great thing. We want our oceans to remain cool. That warming of our oceans is another factor of global warming. Now, if this was to acidify the water in the air all around us, it doesn't just stay there forever, right? Like we talked about during our water cycle or our weather episode yesterday, we talked about that the water cycle is constantly flowing. Those water molecules are being exchanged from being liquid water here on Earth to gaseous water, back to liquid water that falls back to Earth in the form of precipitation. If the water molecules in the air have acidified, we'll see that come back to Earth in the form of acid rain, which is a bad thing. And we can think about why, right? I wouldn't want to be rained on by acid, but even more dangerous, that water is then absorbed into the water in the ground. We use that water. I know that I drink water just about every single day, every day. Everyone should drink water every day, but it's not just people, right? Animals drink water and our plants drink water as well. So we have another demonstration that you can try at home using some white flowers. Now I've taken some white flowers here and I've just dropped them down inside a glass full of food coloring water. So I just put these flowers in overnight and they're just barely starting to see a shift in their color. Let me spin around my flowers here. We can see it best on this yellow daisy. I'll zoom in and then I'll show you how we can recreate this experiment at home. Now, if you take a really close look at our flowers, you can see that along the tips of our flower petals, especially here on this yellow one, right, that water is being absorbed along with the food coloring in the beaker. If you'd like to recreate this activity at home, all you'll need is some flowers and some food coloring. So I set these ones up last night, and we're actually going to keep these flowers, and we'll check back on them throughout the rest of this week as we celebrate Earth Day. All you'll need to do in order to set this up on your own is take your flowers, and before you set up your activity, it's always a good idea to get a fresh snip. So I have some scissors here, and we'll take our little bit of red food coloring left over from our first experiment, give them a fresh snip on an angle, and drop them down inside. All right, we've got red flowers. Let's take another bundle here. And we'll set these ones up in our yellow food coloring. So we've got yellow food coloring being absorbed into these flowers. We've got two more colors left, so we'll split our bundle in half. We always want to give a fresh snip. Just snip, and then drop those ones down in our green food coloring. So this one is green. It's very, very dark because there's lots of food coloring in there. And then lastly, with the rest of our flowers, we'll give these ones a fresh snip, always on an angle, and we'll drop those inside our blue food coloring. Now we'll check back on those in a couple days, but if you'd like to see how this process works, can show you a time-lapse video of someone else tried this activity at home. They recorded it over the course of a few days, and they took this time-lapse video, which speeds up time, just so you can see just how fast this process, or just how well this process works. Now, even though we use this process to dye flowers different colors, which can make them very, very beautiful, right? So using food coloring is safe. But if you were to imagine that this food coloring represented pollution, just like it did during our air pressure activity or our air pollution activity, right? This maybe isn't the greatest thing. Any sort of contaminants or chemicals that end up in our groundwater come back to us in the form of our food, because we eat fruits and vegetables, which we grow using water from the ground and from our lakes and rivers. So we need to be very, very careful about anything we let get into our groundwater and even into our air, because all of those sources are part of our water cycle. All right. We've got one last activity to show you here today on Echo Live in celebration of Earth Day. Someone asked a question about that experiment. Someone asked why we cut it on an angle. That's just how flower experts tell you. It helps them to drink up the water a bit faster. Another tip is that carnations drink a lot more water per day than other species of flowers that you can get at, the grocery store or flower shops. So carnations are inexpensive, but they're also really, really ideal for this experiment. So if you can find them, I highly recommend carnations. If you can't, any other sort of light colored flower should work just the same. You might just need to leave them in there a bit longer, depending on the species of flower that you choose. All right, so we've got one last experiment to show off on Echo Live. We're going to create an invisible fire extinguisher during this activity. For this, you only need a few very simple materials, and this is one that you can easily recreate at home as well. Always get parent supervision, because during this experiment, we'll be creating a fire extinguisher. But instead of using a fire extinguisher like the one I always show off during our program here, we'll be creating our own using an invisible gas. We scoot some materials out of the way here. And I've got these basic materials right here on the table. We've done a baking soda and vinegar reaction a few times here on Echo Live. And it's pretty cool and pretty exciting. You might remember what this reaction looks like when it takes place. I'll go ahead and put on my safety goggles, because you might be familiar that when you mix baking soda and vinegar together, we get kind of a highly volatile reaction. We get lots of bubbles that are created. So I'm going to pour about 1 cup of vinegar into our pitcher here. And then I'll pour in about 2 heaping tablespoons of baking soda. Now you might be able to hear it. You can also see that we're generating a great deal of gas here inside our pitcher. We'll let that gas keep generating. Now, if you've seen this reaction before, or you remember it from Echo Live that we've done so far, what type of gas does a baking soda and vinegar reaction produce? We've talked about the name of it on past episodes. We've even talked about it here on this program. If you remember what gas that is, go ahead and tell me in the chat. So that gas is settling. We've got it here inside our pitcher. While we let that continue to settle, I'm just going to light my row of tea candles here. That way our extinguisher has something to extinguish. If you're trying this at home, of course, always have a parent help you. It's always good to have some assistance. And since we're working with fire, we want to make sure that we're taking all of the safety precautions that we need to. Lots of people telling us the correct answer, that we've generated carbon dioxide gas, which we said is one of those greenhouse gases. And carbon dioxide is much heavier than the rest of the air around us, which makes it so dangerous, right? If it traps heat really low to the surface, that's where humans live. To show you just how heavy this carbon dioxide gas is, I'm just going to gently pick up my pitcher here and pour it over my candles. I'm going to keep all the liquid inside, so I'm not actually pouring out any liquid, just that carbon dioxide gas. Oop, got a little bit of liquid there. ta-da! This carbon dioxide is so heavy or so much more dense than the rest of the air that it actually extinguished all of our candle flames here. It pushed all the oxygen out of the way, which we know in combustion reactions, carbon dioxide or oxygen is super important. You have to have it. And if we think even further, right, humans need oxygen to breathe. So if this heavy carbon dioxide that we're spilling out into the air is all around us, right, there won't be enough lighter oxygen down here on Earth's surface for us to breathe. So we've got a couple more slides to share. This is a great time to, if you have questions about our program so far, type them in the chat. I'd love to answer some questions about our Earth Day episode or some of our Earth Day activities that we've tried so far. But let's think a little bit now about what can we do to reduce our impact on Earth and to reduce our impact on global warming. This is an image of the ozone hole that is over that's over Antarctica. This is 1979, and we can see that the hole, which is noted in this dark blue color, is much, much smaller than it was in 2008. So over time, more industry has popped up, which contribute to that ozone hole by releasing chlorofluorocarbons into the air. So the biggest change that we need to make really doesn't come from individuals, it comes from industry. It comes from those factories that spew out thousands of times more pollution and more air pollution than humans do just in their daily lives. But companies are starting to do their part. With all the research that we've developed over the past 30 years, companies like Denso are starting to come up with plans on how they can reduce their contribution to pollution and to climate change. Specifically, Denso has come up with these three goals that they would like to accomplish over the next 5 years. And they've got a really, really detailed plan about how they're going to do it. One of their biggest goals is that by the year 2025, Denso is going to cut in half their carbon dioxide emissions. If you'd like to learn more about how they're going to do this, either by using more fuel efficient vehicles or using machinery that emits less carbon dioxide in their factories, you can find more information about that on their website. So the biggest change needs to come from those corporations and industries. It really is on them to do that. But humans, we can make changes in our daily lives as well, right? Now, normally on Earth Day, I might recommend that you go to a park and you pick up litter as your contribution to an Earth Day celebration. Right now, humans are staying inside and we're staying safe. And that's a good thing. We should stay home and stay safe, but there are still things we can do at home. If you think back to our air pollution activity, right? Lots of those daily activities aren't necessary. We could think about turning down our thermostat by just a couple degrees, which could save us on those emissions into the air. We can always put on a warmer sweater or a nice pair of fuzzy socks while we're at home, and just those few degrees, if everybody did it, would have a major contribution to not contributing to climate change and not contributing to air pollution. If you're looking for activities that you can try at home, like the ones we've shared here, you can always visit the Michigan Science Center's website, take a look at our home science activities page. We've got links for that EPA activity about air pollution, how to make an invisible fire extinguisher, and a seed ball activity that you could do to help plant more flowers and more plants in your local community, which will help to take that carbon dioxide out of the air. So there's always things we can do, even while we're sitting at home. Let's see if we've got some good questions coming in. Someone asked, if I did the bubbles experiment using dry ice, would it do the same thing? And the answer is yes. So where this color change might represent human contribution to CO2 emissions, if I were to drop even a tiny piece of dry ice into this beaker, we would see a bright red color change because there's so much carbon dioxide packed in each little frozen piece of dry ice. And so that might represent industry. So we could, and we have done that experiment on Echo Live in the past, but great observation. You could recreate that using dry ice as well. So someone asked, why isn't the hole in the ozone layer somewhere else? There is also a hole in the ozone layer on the very top of planet Earth, above the Arctic Circle. So there are multiple ozone holes. The one above Antarctica is most famous because it's been the largest for such a long period of time. But thankfully, since we've noticed the hole and since we've started making changes and laws that help us to reduce our carbon footprint, that hole is getting smaller. Unfortunately, the hole over the Arctic Circle is getting bigger, partly to do with climate change and the fluctuation in weather. If you'd like to learn more about that, there's also links on our at-home science page to monitor the hole in the ozone layer through NASA's website. So they post a picture from every single day showing us what the ozone layer looks like on planet Earth. Someone asked, why is the hole there if there aren't many factories around our poles? And that's because the weather is so cold. So cold weather allows those chemicals in the air to accumulate and actually eat through the holes in the ozone much more quickly. So up close to the pole, since the weather is colder, those reactions go much faster, which is why they concentrate there. Good question. Some people are posting some great suggestions for what you could do on Earth Day. Jim tells us that you can still pick up trash around your neighborhood, and you are absolutely right, especially with how windy it's been. If you even go in your own backyard, you could do your part to pick up some litter, but definitely make sure that you're being safe while you do that. Wear gloves, wash your hands after, just in case the trash came from somewhere that's not clean. So always make sure we're being safe, but that's a great suggestion and such an easy thing that everybody could take 15 minutes out of their day today and do just in celebration of Earth Day, which is very, very important. So someone asked if they put their flowers in food coloring, are they going to change as well? Yes. So white flowers work best, but other colored flowers work for that. I highly recommend you try it at home. We'll keep these ones here on my desk and we'll check back on them throughout the week. All right, keep sending in your questions if you've got them. We'll keep an eye on the comments throughout the rest of the day, but I definitely want to let you go, let you enjoy the rest of your Earth Day here. Big thank you to our sponsors, especially Denso, who is doing their part to help the environment through their EcoVision plan. I hope that you all get outside, even if it's cold. Enjoy your Earth Day just a little bit because Earth is such a beautiful place. It's definitely my favorite planet because it's the one that we live on. So happy Wednesday, everybody, and we hope we'll see you back here tomorrow for even more Earth Day celebrations. Bye.